Design Review Committee meeting. As always, first order of business, please make sure that your cell phones are either off or in the silent mode. And then we will begin with roll call.
Corey Bates.
Present.
Nathaniel Harding. Charles Ainsworth. Anthony Black.
Here.
Julie Kriegel.
Present.
Deborah Richards.
Present.
Connie Scothorn.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Okay. Do we have any potential time constraints for committee members?
I need to leave at noon, which normally wouldn't be a big deal.
Okay. Hopefully we will be out by noon. Do we have any potential abstentions? I will be abstaining from item 6G. I assume everyone's had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
That was a Blatt Scothorn motion. All those in favor? Aye. The minutes are approved. We have no cases withdrawn. We have no continuance requests. We have
we do have
Oh, yes. Sorry.
one. It is item F, DTCA 17-00115. They're requesting to February.
We need to do a continuance. We could do it till February. We're having some utility issues they have to resolve.
Did she voice a preference?
She didn't really voice a preference.
Okay, so the applicant is asking to be continued to the February 15th meeting. So that needs a motion.
So we're looking for a motion to continue item 6G to the February meeting.
So move. Can I just say so move?
Yeah, we're going
I'm sorry, 6F. Sorry. So, yep, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to continue item 6F until
The February meeting.
February meeting.
Second.
So that is Black Kriegel. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So item 6F is continued to the February meeting. We have no items on the consent docket. Okay. Before we get into cases for individual consideration, I'd like to bring item 7, other business, to the forefront, in which we will recognize Betsy Brunstetter for her service on DDRC.
Okay, I'll read Betsy's resolution. A resolution of the Downtown Design Review Committee of the City of Oklahoma City acknowledging Betsy Brunstetter for her valuable service and dedication to the Downtown Design Review Committee. Whereas Betsy Brunstetter has faithfully devoted her time and expertise to serve the citizens of Oklahoma City as a Downtown Design Review Committee member from May 2007 to November 2017, and whereas Betsy Brunstetter was among the inaugural group of Downtown Design Review Committee members, and therefore especially charged with establishing and demonstrating enduring standards for committee procedures, conduct, and decorum, and whereas Betsy Brunstetter has routinely contributed to the committee through her proficient skill and expertise as an architect, including adept analysis of architectural design, urban design, historic preservation, and aesthetics. And whereas Betsy Brunstetter has demonstrated uncommon dedication to the committee through her methodical attention to detail and earnest regard for the applicable standards and guidelines in the consideration of projects presented to the committee. And whereas Betsy Brunstetter's sincerity, collaborative spirit, and compassionate nature have served the community well in resolving conflicts and offering sound technical and creative advice to applicants. And whereas the fulfillment of Betsy Brunstetter's responsibilities on the committee was achieved with an earnest devotion to the well-being of the community and the overall betterment of downtown. Now therefore be it resolved that the Downtown Design Review Committee hereby respectfully commends Betsy Brunstetter for her outstanding years of service to the Downtown Design Review Committee of the City of Oklahoma City, adopted on this 18th day of January 2018.
Thank you, Betsy. For those who don't know, in addition to serving on DDRC for 10 years, Betsy also served on the Urban Design Commission as well. And that kind of commitment is very commendable. It shows a real care for the built environment and for the community. And I know, speaking for everybody up here, thank you for that service.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. So we are now looking for a motion to adopt that resolution.
I move that we adopt the resolution.
Second.
So that is Kriegel Blatt. Motion. All those in favor? Aye. The resolution is adopted. Okay, so moving on to cases for individual consideration. First, we have item 6A, 512 North Broadway Avenue. Is the applicant present? Yes.
I am. Sam Gresham, 400 Northwest 23rd, to represent the owner.
I'm going to, in your packet, the PowerPoint was a little more extensive, so you could see the pictures of the building. Keeping in mind, we're looking at this as though the work hadn't been done because they got a little overzealous, and some of the things done were not part of the approval. Back in May of 2016, DDRC approved a rooftop addition on this building and revisions that included windows and a new front door. The revision before you involves change of windows, an extension on the rooftop addition, as well as they added on to the elevator penthouse. Those are the three items you can see in the staff report that staff had a concern, because it definitely, what they've done is impacted character defining features of the building. So in the staff report, we discussed those. We didn't have an issue with the other items that they've asked, and we have a whole list of those. Staff felt so strongly about the impact on character defining features, we actually recommended denial of those three items. So you'll see a recommendation for denial of those three items. You'll see recommendation of approval for the others. And I know I've had conversations with the architect about possible changes that could
Solve the problem.
Yes, solve the problem. And so I'll let Mr. Grisham speak to you on that.
Thank you.
As I said, Sam Gresham, architect, here to represent the owner. I'm going to apologize. We don't design this until after it's done. This process has been a bit fluid and a little less. I don't want to take responsibility for this. I just want to fix it. So we've proposed some ideas to staff to remedy this, to cover it up, essentially, and change elements of the exterior to comply with what they find objectionable about the improvements or the changes that have been made to the third floor. It's really just this far east end, and it really involves the penthouse. Our proposal is, as I said, we've made a suggestion after staff's report on the recommended item 1 of our staff report that recommends denial. We ask, though, that on item 2, where you can approve some of these items, we ask that those be approved so that they can be resolved, I guess, and simplify what we're asking for a continuance in item 1 of the staff recommendation, staff report.
Okay, and is the intention to submit additional
Yes.
documentation to staff?
New drawings to provide alternatives.
Okay. Is that an option to continue part of an item? Okay.
Yes, staff would support continuing item 1P1, 1P2, and 1Q1. which
Right,
is
it's
out.
basically
Basically
the
taking number 1 where we say deny, and instead of deny, just
Right,
continue
right.
those items. And I guess because they're already into design, because we need it by next week, we could continue to February, because I think he's prepared to go ahead and submit possible solutions to me.
So that, yeah, that additional documentation would need to be submitted in roughly a
Right away.
week or so. Is that acceptable?
We have it, yes.
Do we have any comments or questions from the committee? Do we have anyone else who would like to speak to this project? Well, I personally share staff's recommendations regarding how to break this up and approving the items listed in Part 2 of the staff recommendation. And then we look forward to seeing those modifications, or I personally do. I'm speaking for myself. If there's no further discussion, do we have a motion?
Is this going to be one or two motions? Okay. I'll make a motion to continue item 1P1 as listed, 1P1 and 1Q1.
There's also 1P2.
I'm going to make a motion to continue items 1P1, 1P2, and 1Q1 as listed in the staff report
Thank you.
to the February meeting.
Yes.
Second.
That was Blatt, Kriegel. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Then I'll make a motion to approve items referenced in section C and D of the staff report, items 1P3, 1P4, 1Q2, 1Q3, and 2C.
Second.
That was Blatt, Kriegel. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is item 6B, 500 South Robinson Avenue. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is a revision to the convention center, which the committee approved just a month or two ago. The design team has added some overhead pedestrian walkways, one that would attach to the convention center hotel that's proposed to the north, and another that would connect to a parking garage that is proposed to the northeast of the site. And there's some accompanying site work that goes along with that.
All right, so good morning. I'm Kevin Cook with Populous, project architect for the Convention Center. As Lisa stated, we received approval from you guys, I believe it was in October, end of October last year. And since then, some additional development has been introduced by the city, a future parking garage, which would be to the northeast of our site. And the request to provide a connection to that future parking garage, as well as at the same time with the ongoing development of the new hotel north of our building, a second pedestrian connection between the hotel and the convention center was further developed, and so we're here to show you those two items that we didn't have a chance to present last time we were here. So just a real quick summary. This is the convention center, park, hotel, aerial kind of district here. Again, placeholder locations, but you can see to the north of our building on here the hotel, or a version of the hotel, and a parking structure, and those are the two items that we are looking to make connections to. So just a quick update or reference, the building itself has not changed. The program areas of the building are still there, the same 200,000 square foot exhibit hall, the 45,000 square feet of meeting spaces, and the 30,000 square foot ballroom. All that's still as is, and as we've showed you last time, we're really just talking about an extension of level 2 along the north face of the building here, and bridges that reach across 4th Street. So here's a black and white site plan of the building, and we've ghosted in the future parking garage here at the northeast of our building, and then to the northwest, the hotel. And you can faintly make out a crossing over 4th Street, a pedestrian walkway along the north face of the building, if you're following my cursor, and then a possible connection to the hotel. So looking at these SketchUp aerials here, if you look at this, you're seeing the convention center up here in the top right of each image, and you can see the north face of the building. This pedestrian walkway would be provided at level 2, and then there would be a garage connection or bridge from our building reaching over to the parking garage. That's going to be built and is being documented as part of our base scope of our building. The second bridge, which is the bridge from our level 2 across to the hotel, we're currently documenting that as an ad alternate, so we're going to get a price on it and see if it fits in with our budget moving forward. Plus, knowing the hotel is behind us in scope, there's still some additional design work that would be required to make sure the connection is as seamless as we can be. But at this point, we've drawn what we know. We've coordinated with the hotel team some, and we have something in our documentation that can get priced. Just another view, the west side of the building, or Robinson Street side here, is at the bottom. You start to see this walkway and bridge access across there. What we did is we've extended out the current facade that we had. It's a plaster stucco facade. We pulled that out, and what it did is it created a covered walkway below along 4th Street. We talked about that last time, as this would be kind of a pedestrian plaza area that would allow exhibit space to spill out on certain events. So what this does do is provide a nice covered walkway for exterior use, whether it's shade or some protection for maybe on a rainy day or something. If you're walking from the garage trying to get to the building, you could get some covered areas there, which is nice. But ultimately, this just provides another option for customers and users of the building, those that park in the garage, a way to get into the building in an enclosed and in conditioned space, rather than walking outside should there be inclement weather or other needs. But ultimately, it was just, we still want to encourage people to use the streets and sidewalks at times too, and it's just providing a second option for this condition. This is a newer facade. The previous views were earlier on in the concepts of this. We have gone in and added some larger windows along this to get more light into that long walkway, so the windows are a little bigger on this elevation, the current elevation, than they were in some of these SketchUp views. As you see, they were more single punched openings, and we tried to get some more light and views out. And then we've updated the landscape under here to allow more free movement. There used to be some planters and other boxes, planter boxes and lights and things around here that we had to remove when the columns came in to support the structure, and to allow movement under there a little more free for the covered access of this space. And just another quick view of that north facade. And then last, here's kind of the overall landscape design of that area. Again, nothing really a lot different. The same notions and designs are still there that we had initially showed. It's just how did it have to change a little bit when this walkway was introduced. So any questions?
Could you speak to the cladding materials for each bridge?
The bridges, yes, let's go back a little bit. The pedestrian bridge to the garage, which would be this bridge up here, it's an extension of the same material that is on the north facade, so it's basically curtain wall with plaster stucco on each side. And then if you go to the hotel bridge, it gets a little bit more treatment. You can see it here. Is there another view? That bridge gets a wrap of some of the terracotta and the wood veneer that we had used on the soffits and other features where we had more enhanced materials on the western facade of the building. So that bridge carries some of that same material in and gets a little bit nicer finish than the garage bridge.
And then also, could you speak to the the sidewalk changes that are part of this application as well?
Yes, so really what that was referring to was the changes that were required around here for the bridge, but we did add some change to the sidewalks here along 6th Street to get some additional bus queuing. This isn't a bus drop-off space for pedestrians, but it's for buses to get off of 6th Street. Prior to that, they were just parking along the curb of 6th Street. We wanted to maintain 6th Street's flow a little better, so we decided to do that, and it had to just revise the paving and some of the landscaping back there.
Do we have any other questions or comments from the committee for the applicant? Do we have anyone here, anyone else that would like to speak to this? Well, personally, I think the extension of the bridge on the north side of the building does enhance the sidewalk, specifically to the purpose of having exhibit space on that sidewalk spill out of the building. Providing some cover past the building facade is beneficial to that. And then almost clearing the sidewalk in front of those overhead doors allows for more flexibility in what those exhibits could potentially be.
Yes, I agree.
If there's no other comments or questions, we'd be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the item as recommended by the staff report.
Second.
That was Black Kriegel. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Application is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item, item 6C, 631 West California Avenue. Is the applicant present? With the applicant not currently present, we will tentatively move this item to the end of cases for individual consideration. We will move on to item 6D, 202 South Lee Avenue. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Thank you.
I wanted to point out that you have in front of all your places a handout provided by the applicant. There's actually one from him for this item and the next item. The other handouts that you had are for the next item. This is the first one of what they refer to as small cell towers, a pole. And this one is proposed to go in the right-of-way. Did I get this right? Yes. Oops, sorry. It's proposed to go in the right-of-way on South Lee, just north of Southwest 2nd Street. Currently adjacent to it, it's a parking lot for Ozarka Water, and you can see the path here is where I-40 used to be, and it's the path of where the boulevard is going to go in, the section they haven't started working on yet. So it's proposed to go between the sidewalk and the fence. I put a red X approximately where it's going to go. In the staff report, I indicate the sidewalk actually got replaced subsequent to the application being received. And the applicant had no idea that it got replaced, and so the topography has changed, and it's pretty steep. The sidewalk might actually even be a little wider. But staff is concerned about this location from the standpoint at some point in the future, if we anticipate that this site is developed. As you know, buildings coming out all the way to the street could be impacted if there's a 35-foot tall pole either on the property line or within a foot of the property line. Could impact the design, the location of doors and windows, that type of thing. We contacted the Public Works Department because we're also concerned because of the location of where the boulevard's going to go in this area. So let me go back this way. And there is a significant amount of work that's going to go in this area. Apparently, Second Street's going to be closed. The entrance to the parking lot right now is on Second Street, and they're looking to relocate that access over here to Lee, which potentially could be right where the pole's proposed. So in the staff report, we recommend several things. One is we feel the best location for something like this would be in the back of a property, on the alley, next to a building, on top of a building, and not in the amenity zone where you want to see things that are amenities to pedestrians, such as benches or trash cans or that type of thing, landscaping. This area is going to change, especially when the boulevard goes in. And so staff recommends that this item be continued to allow for them to look for moving this location and not having it out in the right-of-way. And we recommend that it be continued till the March meeting because we weren't sure that they'd be able to actually come up with additional information by next week when I need it for your February meeting.
Are you amenable to providing additional information and continuing these cases?
Donald Smock, 608 Mary Lee Lane from Edmond, Oklahoma, on behalf of the applicant. We have spoken with MacArthur's consultants yesterday and the property owner, and we have a really good idea of what will be taking place there when the build-out comes with Oklahoma City Boulevard, and we believe we would like to move forward with this. The areas where Second Street and the drive of the property owner, it will remain open. He will have access to go up and down Dewey to Second Street. And also the alternative Lee Avenue new entrance or exit to his property is one that the property owner can say, yes, let's have that one as well, or they can say, no, the one we have off at Second Street is fine. Our pole would be south of that new curb cut on Lee Avenue. So we believe our pole is in a good position and it wouldn't be impacted by the new construction of the Oklahoma City Boulevard.
And just one thing, 'cause sorry I didn't have this up earlier. In the staff report, the proposed pole's 35 foot from the ground up to the top of the antenna. And if you look at that, the fence is 6 foot tall. So one of the things staff also included in our recommendation is that there appears to be proportionally that pole doesn't appear to be photoshopped in at 35 feet, and it's going to be taller than that if the fence is actually, and it is 6 foot tall fence. So we were recommending that in addition to all the other items I mentioned, that this get revised so that it's more accurate with what it's going to look like, whatever location they choose.
I measured the fence yesterday. It's in the packet. It's 6 foot 8.5 inches tall, and the pole itself does need to add another 15 feet proportion, but it won't be any taller than the utility pole across the street.
Is there anything that precludes the pole's location from being moved north or south along the property?
In the packet, there's some information as far as how this technology works. It's different than the regular cell towers that we see in those blade-looking devices. If you would turn in the packet through the information of the increased usage, you'll find a page that looks like this, kind of a breakdown of the equipment. This cell pole equipment is very advanced in a way that it cannot perform. It will gain interference if it's next to a regular traditional cell pole. It has to be away from overhead power lines, has to have a umbrella of area, has to have open sky above it. The antenna itself is 3 feet tall, 4.5 inches round, and again, the interference from other power lines and also other traditional cell tower antennas interferes with this signal. In fact, another small cell cannot be any closer than 500 feet from an existing one. So there are some technical things that we need to be aware of. That's why we don't do the alleyways. Most of the alleyways are found with overhead power lines, and it's one of the reasons why we applied for the CCN with the Corporation Commission to go through the Utilities Department to be licensed in the state of Oklahoma. Our company is licensed in all 50 states. We're the largest independent cellular equipment infrastructure provider in the United States.
So I see that there's existing lines on the west side of the road. My question still holds, is there anything precluding moving this pole north or south along that side of the property?
On the west side,
No,
or on the east side?
I'm sorry, the west side. Based on this photo, there are electrical lines on the west side of the street.
Right.
So my question still holds, is there anything precluding shifting this pole north or south of its current location along that property?
There wouldn't be anything, there is on the north end of the property power lines that start up that go down the alley. So it would have to jump over that alley and into the next lot. But the other reason why we accepted this site is the property owner is in an agreement. On the last page, you'll see that they have an agreement to the no objection of us to install here. We're not obligated to seek out the property owner's permission, but we always try to communicate with the property owner, and he was agreeable for the installation on the adjacent property.
And I found a picture describing what he was saying, that when you go north of this location on the east side, when you get to the alley,
Okay.
that's where the poles start up, and they actually have poles on the east side of Lee Street, north of here.
Okay, that helps.
Okay.
Do we have any other comments or questions from the committee for the applicant?
Yeah, why can't you go on top of a building?
Again, on top of the buildings or on the private properties, the equipment people that, the internet providers do not want to be on private properties because the uniformity of working with the cities and the ability to work in the right-of-way as part of the utility licensing through the state of Oklahoma allows us to do that. But you cannot also control if a private property owner wants to put an antenna on top of their building, which would take down the availability for our antenna to work properly. So by putting on the pole in the right-of-way is the best solution to make sure that we have open air, we are able to pick the spot that is best for the signal situation in those areas. None of these poles are by speculation. It's not a situation, if you build it, they will come. The need is already there. So that's why these areas have been selected. It's not by randomness or future build-out. It's what is needed there right now.
So I don't know the first thing about cell towers, but they're everywhere, and I'd like to see fewer of them. So you'll have to treat me like I don't know anything about them. If this is something that's brand new, does that mean that you can't get cell service in these areas now?
Pardon me?
you can get cell service. Is this a different kind of cell service that we don't have?
What is going on is there's a tremendous drain on the traditional cell tower. If you would turn in the packet to that page that shows the traditional cell towers, I think there's 3 pictures. I'll kind of break that down real quick. Here we are. This is the page, traditional cell towers. What happens is those are great for calls, voice calls and texting, but they're terribly inefficient for data streaming, and that's what the kids and our grandkids are doing all the time with their cell phones, is the high demand of data and video from anything from the kids' recreational time to school time. Everything is going to be streaming on the internet, which has caused a great demand of more signal through the system. So this antenna that has been developed, this small cell antenna, is a superstar. It's on jet fuel. It does a much better job. It's more efficient than the traditional cell blades or cell tower that you see around town. And read the hypothetical in there from Verizon. They asked how many additional cell towers it would take if that were the only means utilized to cover the usage demands in the U.S. for 7 years. The answer was 3 million of the traditional cell towers. And there's only 300,000 cell towers in the United States today. So every cell tower you see would need to be multiplied 10 times more of those same type, inefficient type towers. And the industry knows by 2020, they're required to have this new availability to handle the new 5G signal that the FCC has mandated. So everything is needing to be improved and upgraded. And multiplying these type of towers by 10 is something the industry understood that it would not fly. So the development of the small cell, this little antenna that we are working with and have increased the technology on, is the solution. Because with one of those, you replace 10 of the traditional cell towers. So you won't have a lot of those coming up and sprouting up.
Mr. Smock, if I may ask a question, a lot of cell towers are on private property with a rent being paid to the property owner. So my question is, have you talked to this particular property owner regarding an arrangement on the property, either on a building or on somewhere on his property?
No, this is, the pole is in the right-of-way, so the conversation would be the city of Oklahoma City, but he is not getting any funding from this pole being in the right-of-way adjacent to his property, no.
So I guess my question is, have y'all discussed putting it slightly off of this particular location?
No, again, with the way the company is set up, they want to work with the jurisdictions and not private property owners. So that's just the way the system is put together. And also, it really gives us the ability to control what we're getting into as far as the antenna and the interference that it can pick up. If you're on, again, with private property owners, there's not necessarily that guarantee unless you write it out in some contract.
Right, a long-term lease, which most cell tower providers do. They enter into a long-term lease with property owners, private property owners. Is that not something you would consider in this case?
The company does not consider private property owners as a viable solution for the new cells.
I have a question. If we can imagine that there's going to be a lot of these types of things built, I would also prefer to see them in the alley. And I'm curious, do we have locations where the utilities have been moved underground in some of the alleys in Oklahoma City, so that, like, the power lines are underground, so that these new cell towers could be placed in those locations, in those alleys?
If the alleyway, most generally the alleyways have been given an easement to a specific power company. If it's recorded in the plat that way, There's not really anything we can do about that as far as entering into that easement. The other situation is sometimes the alleyways then become vacated, which puts in a situation that you would have to move the pole because the property owner is recapturing the property that's in the alley, half of the alley.
Yeah, but you can maintain the easement once it's vacated, because there'd still be sewer lines in there potentially, or water lines, so they would never build on top of it. It would remain an easement, like utility easement probably, in that situation, I think. I don't know, I would, prefer to see them in the alleys, I don't know.
If you would look on the handout, there is a typical alley off of Classen, which we tried to locate on Classen to stay out of the downtown design district zones, but there's water lines that run up and down Classen that prohibits us, but this is a typical alleyway, and the antenna wouldn't be able to function. It has to be above all of the electrical lines, and so for that part, that's another reason why, we try to stay out of the alleyways. But if the city has property in the alley and the plat doesn't have something that would say that only this company can locate here, that's something that we would always consider.
You said that your cell tower is 10 times more efficient than the others. Does that mean that 10 other poles are going to come down, or 9?
No, the towers have, the poles and the towers exist, they coexist. To alleviate the cell tower situation, you would have to build more of the cell poles to take their place. Right now, the cell towers are overworking. They're overworked, so these small cells will come in, fill those gaps, but it's something that doesn't replace the cell tower. It uses it in the system itself. It just plugs a hole in the system where it's at. And that's why these are not random places, locations that we put these. There's a need, there's a gap there, it needs to be filled. So, but to your question, it doesn't replace it, it uses it, but it will slow the amount of cell towers, typical cell towers, from being built.
So if you put this in the right-of-way, you're going to be applying for a revocable permit?
Yes, we apply for a revocable permit on all of these.
So in the event that something happens and that needs to be revoked, what is the solution at that point? You've got a tower that at some point you're at risk for it to be removed. And so what I'm curious about is, if you are looking at this from a long-term situation, why not set it up in situations where you're not requesting revocable permits, where they could be taken into effect and your pole be removed?
I've been working with this company since April, and I've removed 3 already because of development circumstances, which is a problem. It's not a problem, but it's something that we do. And Oklahoma City uses the revocable permit for this usage, and that is the method that we abide by.
Has any study been done of, if you were asked to remove the pole that is in the location that you're proposing, where would you be going to for the next available spot?
The radio frequency engineers would look at the area and find another placement for that, either down the street or next block over. That's how it works, and that's what we've done.
Do you ever do them where they're not in the right-of-way? You say you don't like to do them in alleyways, you won't do them on public property, but do you have any cell towers that are not in public right-of-way?
Cell poles? No, we don't have any that are not in the right-of-way, no.
Is there anything that would preclude placing the pole in the right-of-way between the sidewalk and the street, similar to an electric pole?
Water lines, sewer lines, we bury these, we bore to a depth of about 6 to 9 feet, depending on the soil type. And so we, for Oklahoma City, We look at the utility atlases, and we also measure the depths as according to the as-built, where the water lines are and the sewer lines. On this particular one, we moved it to the east of the sidewalk because there is a large water line that runs north and south down the street, so we wanted to be sure we're a measured way from that water line.
And you've stated that you've met with the current property owner, and they have,
Yes, go ahead.
they've acknowledged this location as acceptable to them.
Right. In the last page on your packet for this address, you'll find the agreement with the property owner and ourselves. And again, it's something that we're not required to do, but we always like to get a heads up to the property owners at these locations.
The staff recommendation includes that the applicant would coordinate with the Public Works Department, as this could potentially impact the Oklahoma City Boulevard project. Have you reached out to the Public Works Department?
I have. I placed a call to Deborah Miller, and I dropped by her office, and she was in the meeting when I dropped by, and I sent her a couple of emails on the subject, but I have not heard back from them. So instead of waiting for that, I went ahead and spoke to the MacArthur Associate consultant, the folks that were granted the contract for the build-out, and that's who we were able to get the idea of the exact locations of what road's going to be closed, how it would interfere with the Second and Lee, and we have a good comfort of the location of our pole from those talks.
Like, in the next 10, 15 years, how many of these poles could we imagine are coming? I'm curious if this should be something that's coordinated with like public utilities and to try and figure out a strategy.
As working with the Oklahoma Corporation Commission and having the CCN, we do work with the utilities right along with us in the right-of-way. So there's what the future holds as far as, as far out as we know what's going to happen in 2020. But other than that, today is the need of the signal, and what gaps needs to be filled is what we're trying to address.
Yeah, and I don't deny that we probably need new types of utility poles and things like that, but there's maybe some sort of, hopefully, strategy when they place power lines and things like that in the alley. So it seems like new utilities should also have a general strategy for how we can get them out of the kind of most visible public spaces. I'm not sure what the answer is. It seems like a new type of utility.
I think in addition to the long-term, I've still got some gaps in what the short-term plans are for this space. I realize that you've had a couple of conversations with a consultant, but you haven't had a conversation with the city yet. It seems like there's infrastructure that's going to impact this site that we aren't aware of yet. We don't have a graphic. We don't know what the plans are. We don't have the ability to confirm or even discuss how this pole is going to relate to some very immediate construction that's going to happen in this area. Could that be produced? Maybe this is a short continuance for this specific item, if you choose, but to put together a packet that shows what the immediate development for this area would be.
Well, I spoke with the MacArthur Associated Consultants yesterday. I wanted to have a hard copy of the layout for this area, but they were hesitant because their client is the city of Oklahoma City and ODOT, not me. But they allowed me to view those documents. So if the city would allow them to release that information, and I can show you what we were able to see yesterday, that the pole where it's at will not have any type of, wouldn't be in danger of having to be moved if it was set in later on. So that's the the forecast I can give you on that.
Reading the elevations, the finish for the pole itself would be galvanized steel. Are there any other finish options available?
Wood, galvanized steel, painted. We're painting this one black to match the property owner's parking light poles. So there would be a flow with his parking lot poles, and we're putting it right in line with those. So it'll be a seamless transition. It won't look out of whack. But the materials, again, Class A, Class 1, Douglas fir, galvanized steel, or painted galvanized steel.
I still have this question about how, we have two right now before us that are, these poles that are going to be put in, or that you want to put in right away, but we don't know what you're planning on the next year or two or 5. How many more poles are going to be added?
What we have taken from the internet and the cell provider is that they're not going to piecemeal this out. They want it all done in one swoop. So,
But we just have 2 now. That feels
Right.
piecemeal to me. No?
in this area, we have others that have revocable permits that will be coming up, that will be filed through Laura's office. So there'll be more than the 2 that you see right now.
And I guess this really bothers me because it seems like we should be setting a policy as to where these should go and where these couldn't, but we don't know where all the rest of them were going to be. This means we could add an unlimited number of poles, doesn't
It wouldn't be unlimited. They don't have a budget for that. But
it? Can we limit them?
the gaps in the system limits how many they want to put out. They're not going to oversaturate, but what they're doing is addressing what the need is now. And so that's, we're not putting anything in the right of way that will become more useful as time goes on. They're addressing the need right now to shore up the signal, to make it ready for 2020. And the other thing about the new pole is that it is 5G rated already. So when FCC flips that switch, the new poles, there won't be any updates needed for those. There won't be any additional equipment added. It's already in place for 2020.
I have a question for Lisa and Laura. I still have an issue of it not being on an arrangement like we see in other cell towers where they're on private property and they have to pay rent. Are there other cell towers that you're aware of where we've allowed them in right-of-ways? I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah, just speaking for downtown, so just to back up to Connie's questions, the Downtown Development Framework and the ordinance regs and guidelines identify, what happens between the building facade and the street curb. And it's typically a buffer zone, amenity zone, sidewalk, and then a storefront zone. So the priority of that is sidewalk zone to where pedestrians can freely pass. The amenity zone is the space between the curb and the sidewalk, where, as Mr. Smock was saying, there's a lot of utilities in that area anyway. It's a great place for benches, trash receptacles, newspaper stands, that kind of stuff, things that that people actually use. And that was one of the main distinctions we made in the staff report, that we believe that the public right-of-way and the amenity zone is for people to use.
I agree, and especially since there should be alternatives other than being right there on the right-of-way.
Right.
And I understand it might not maximize your profits on that particular tower, but see competition doing
And
that.
one more point to this. I'm pretty sure we had a conversation and somebody explained why we couldn't use existing light poles and existing street light poles for these. Do you remember
Yes.
why that was?
The folks that maintain the street lights and utility poles, OG&E, and OG&E will not allow a pole top for their poles due to safety of their workers. So we have an agreement with OG&E every day with our poles because they supply us the electricity, 110 volts low volt, 120 rather. But as far as attaching to those poles, they err on the side of their safety for the workers, company policy. And we've run a couple other apparatuses by them that works up in Chicago for Con Ed, and they still said that they would rather keep the pole top to themselves instead of allowing the antenna be above those wires. So we did try an effort to do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out because, yeah, there is at some point, I think everyone's touching on it, a saturation. You can't just put it all on the street.
And just as an explanation, our office receives the revocable permits when they come in. And when these have come in, I've responded back to the applicant and to permitting that I haven't been able to sign off on them because we didn't have a CA. And so these two are the first ones that they've submitted for CAs. There are others in different parts of the city that are not in design districts that have been installed. But to my understanding, in the downtown design district, these are the very first ones that you guys are considering today.
And the only thing that I would say is that we really can't prevent them from, being able to provide cellular service. What we can do is maybe, the locations. We can, if there are other places that they can provide the service from, we could look at, how you could camouflage them maybe, or make them look better, or that kind of thing. But we cannot completely prevent them from having cellular service. I don't know if, but they would have to prove that there's no other place that they can get it.
That's my question. I think there are alternatives because other cell towers are not in right-of-ways. And they're on top of buildings, they're in other locations. I guess that's my concern, is are we setting a precedent? And every cell tower company is now going to want to be right there on the street.
And they would have to be able to have some type of an agreement, and if they have not been able to have an agreement, then that may be one factor, where that would show that they are not able to place it anywhere else, but you'd need to be satisfied that that is the case.
What happens if this type of small cell the pole is not allowed in these areas, will come a need to add the additional cell towers that you speak of. So those would be popping up on the private properties in more numbers than what this little cell pole was going to be able to do at this location. So the alternative is they will not leave a donut hole here. The cell companies, they have to provide the cell service. And the other alternative would be, if they're not using the small cells, it would revert back to a number more of those traditional cell poles, as you see in the back of the picture, to the east of this property. So those would be the result of not having or banning or not allowing the small cells in these areas. Now, again, if the use is not there, we don't need to be here. But the use is there. The customers are demanding this by the popularity of the downtown. Creates this situation. It is a problem. Let's say on some ends and others ends that it's not. But by virtue of demand, there is a need for closing the gaps that are in the system. That's why we're proposing this.
Let me ask you a question since we're up on this one. The existing large cell tower, which is over by Walker and Reno, if you were located on that one as a co-location, could you serve the area that you're trying to serve with this pole?
Again, back to the technology of this pole, it wouldn't be able to function properly near this pole. So that's why, again, we're east, or rather west of that cell tower. The signals start compacting and reflecting off each other, and so it would render the new technology useless. So that's why we can't co-locate on roofs or annex to other cell towers or on cell towers. That's why we have it attached to a pole. There won't be any other apparatuses on the pole. There will be no other cell, small cells on the pole. The pole serves the actual antenna itself. So again, they can't be a like small cell tower or cell pole cannot be any closer than 500 feet away from one another, and we cannot certainly be on a cell tower because of the interference.
What I'm taking from this is you're saying that if there's a gap in the system and this tower that you're proposing is not allowed, then we're going to revert back to the old technology. But the old technology is going to identify a location that is available for you, but you're choosing not to put it there. So it's a matter of choice. If they have the ability to come in and bring in 10 more towers, there are 10 tower sites available that they would have to comply with as well. They wouldn't be able to put them in the right-of-way.
They want to be putting them in the right-of-way.
Right, and what I'm not seeing is that we're looking at a spot that you've determined works well for you, works well for these small cell towers, but we're not seeing what land area in close proximity would be a better suit and not in the right-of-way. We're not seeing those types of options. All that's being presented right now is just this one.
There's no option outside of the right-of-way.
Is that by choice, or is that
that's by
company choice?
It keeps us away from the other traditional cell towers and cell blades that you see around attached to other buildings. And it keeps us in the utility, as we're recognized by the Corporation Commission to work with utilities in the state of Oklahoma. So that's what the equipment is considered through the Oklahoma Corporation Commission is a part of the utility family.
But if there's a gap in service, then there's not a cell tower there currently that you'd be in conflict with. If you move to a different location, you're saying that you can't go to a location where you'd be in conflict with another cell tower, but if there's a cell tower there, there's not a gap in service. So the choice of the company to put cell towers in right-of-way rather than in other locations, either by agreement with property owners or whatever other means and method, that's the reason why the current proposal is to put this in this location in the right-of-way, in the public zone of the right-of-way.
In the right-of-way, where utilities do exist, that's why the company has gone this direction. Again, with private property owners, if you have a property changing hands, that can also cloud a contract that might be with a private property owner. Someone passes, probate, what have you. The situation is that these are put in the right-of-way for the reason because we're recognized by the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, part of the utility family, and that's why we're there. But the other reasons are to get away from the interference and to, just because we're not able to exist under power lines, attached to other cell towers, or on top of buildings with other cell blades there, servicing the cell community with that technology. The interference is not something that this technology can overcome.
No.
I would say at a minimum, being part of the utility family, there needs to be some coordination with the other existing utilities, and if a tower like this were to be placed in the right-of-way, to be placed between the sidewalk and the curb, similar to traditional power lines. And I understand that the current location has existing utilities between the sidewalk and the curb, and either there has yet to be an effort to coordinate with those existing utilities, or there has, or we haven't seen any other options for where it could be placed between the sidewalk and the curb.
We do coordinate with the city utilities department. That's why the placement is east of the sidewalk. And we also have power runs, power designs from OG&E, which they come out and see how they would design the power run to these poles. So we work with utilities, Oklahoma City Utility Department daily to make sure, because we exclude more than we add because of the underground water lines, fiber optics, gas lines, and we work with OG&E every day. We just worked with them on 10 sites at the first of the week. So we have to work with OG&E as a utility department.
I'm just wondering, can we move on to a motion pretty soon? I have concerns that you haven't really exhausted all options. I mean, I know it's probably more economically attractive to be in the right-of-way, but the long-term lease with lots of renewal options, that's a normal thing with a cell tower lease. You're not at risk of being moved if the property changes hands. That all can be written into the contract. So I'm not comfortable that you've looked at all other options. I think this one seems like the easiest route, and I'd like us to give this more time, if possible. So can I make a motion at this point?
You can make a motion whenever.
Okay, here we go. I move that we continue the case to the March 21st, 2018 meeting as recommended in the staff report.
And does that include the other information listed there
Yes.
about?
Before we second that motion, we need to ask the applicant if you are open to continuing the case.
Yes, we want to be able to cooperate with this committee, and we're open to that. I'll have to let the property owner know that it's been tabled, so that would be an impact to him as well. So.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the table to continue the case to the March.
To March, February.
Per the staff recommendation, it says the March meeting, so I'm going to go with what's in the staff recommendation on this. So do I need to reword that? Okay.
I'll second that.
So that was Kriegel, Scarthon. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Case is continued.
Thank you.
So we will move on to item 6E, which is 903 Northwest 4th Street, and a similar type application.
Similar concerns. On this one, you have some public comment that I passed out in addition to the handout from Mr. Smock. Staff is also recommending that this item be continued to March and with the same things such as trying to relocate it, alleys on buildings, next to buildings. The location that they're proposing, if you look on the aerial, we have Classen on the left. So it's proposed to be about a block east of Classen, approximately in this location. We do talk in the staff report that the drawings, we just need some confirmation between the survey of where it's going to be located and one of their, the rendering of where it's going to be located, but it's somewhere in this general area on the north side of the sidewalk. There is an existing building here. There is, one of the emails you got was from this property owner of this piece. Unfortunately, none of those people were able to attend today. That's why they sent the emails. And I don't need to repeat everything, but staff is recommending that it be continued. I do have pictures of that area. Across the street, and I will just say, I had asked Mr. Spock, here's the alley, and it has poles in the alley. Across the street to the south, there's a very large OG&E substation, and so I brought that up because I thought, oh, that'd be a great location, because we've already got all of that over there. However, in talking with him, the issue of interference, the issue of overhead power lines came up, and I just wanted to mention that because I was hoping that would be an easy solution, and it wasn't in my conversations with him.
Donald Smock, 608 Mary Lee Lane, Edmond, Oklahoma, here on behalf of the applicant. On this particular site, we did try to contact the property owners numerous times. Phone calls stopped in, but they were not available. Again, we're not compelled to do that, but we do want to always bring in the adjacent property owners into this situation for this. In this packet on the handout, there's other options for this location that might make sense with the pole configuration. The addition of the light arm would be something that would work in this neighborhood area, would be a nice amenity. And our engineers wouldn't be opposed to seeing if there's any interference from the substation across the street. There's no direct overhead lines, which is a plus. But being a substation, it does generate a lot of interference. However, our engineers would be more than happy to look at that, and we're more than well prepared to move with a continuance on this. But looking at the options in this packet, you see a breakdown and description of all the equipment on the pole and the pole options that you can see that are more suitable for an area like this. You see real-time applications in Los Angeles, New York City, and various other locations. The Kansas City, Missouri build-out would be something that might work in this downtown area. Again, it would be something that the committee can choose as far as what the design of the light pole would be, if that's the direction they would like to go in a galvanized light pole. But they do blend in fairly well with the surrounding areas. They just kind of, they go away. So it is something that the company has worked hard on to show that they can blend in well with the surrounding areas in these urban impact areas. So again, keeping that in mind, we would be happy to agree with a postponement, if that's the view of the committee, to see if we can find a location, perhaps across the street, if the engineers would agree with the signal, if there's interference with that. I know there is a water line that runs down 4th Street. I believe we would be clear of that. We have to be at least 10 feet off of the water line. So that is something that we would be agreeable to continue this.
I think it would be good to coordinate with the property owner and look at locations that's kind of works for everybody on the street. But this also makes me think that maybe the solution could be used in the other location as well, that as we put this new technology in place around the city, we just slowly take down existing light poles and replace them with this. I'm not sure if that maybe is an option. I mean, as we continue it, maybe we can look at that as just kind of an overall strategy for the city.
Jumping back to the Lee Avenue, there was a dusk to dawn light on the light pole, utility pole, there at the corner of 2nd and Lee. So that's why we didn't propose a light to be redundant. But if it's something the committee would want to move forward with, that's something we would look at as well. It's not a problem.
If you agree to a continuance, and if that's the way that this goes, I see in this packet, the second packet, a lot of successful installations where the pole is near the curb and the pole is part of a light system that's repetitive down. So I think it is successful whenever there are a series of poles and one of them has a very small percentage of its overall height in that last little bit of a, but it's dual use. And if you're driving down and you're seeing those repetitive poles and they're all close to the street and they're not like the Kansas City photo where it's back in the grass in an area where hopefully development would occur, I'd like to see what are the opportunities for that kind of an installation for your poles, and then know whether or not the current light pole agreement that the city might have, could something be worked out with them to where a similar type of installation could occur with a light pole system that's already present in the city.
It's my understanding that OG&E ends up owning the light poles, and so it wouldn't necessarily be a conversation he needs to have with the city, versus it's probably more with OG&E, I believe is.
Yeah, we have no problem being in agreement with the maintenance with OG&E or with the city. We would give that over to them or to the city. It's whatever works out best.
Do we have any other comments or questions from the committee? Would anyone else here like to speak to this? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue item 6E to the same March meeting to allow you to have the opportunity to address the locations and the aesthetics and potential co-use of other items within the, that area of the right-of-way.
Thank you all for your time this week.
Second.
That was a Blatt Squarthon. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item is continued.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Going down the agenda, item 6F was continued in our continuous request section. So we will move on to item 6G, of which I will be abstaining. And Tony.
So item 6G is case number DTCA 17-00116 at 625 Northwest 4th Street. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Dan Govine of 1828 Northwest 18th Street, Oklahoma City, with Alfred Hall Monahan Morris, the architect, and I'm joined by Richard McCallum, the developer. We have a presentation. I wonder if you have that file. If I might be able to click through that as I go. It'll move quicker, I promise. I have that on a thumb drive. Sure. Great. Thank you. Perfect. Okay. Oops. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So as we've worked, I think, on 6 projects together with Richard. So this isn't the first time we've been here. The key difference with this proposal is that this is a for sale product as opposed to some of the rental typologies that we've previously worked on in Deep Deuce with Level and Mosaic. So this is a different, a higher end unit that we're proposing here. We've done a lot of market research to try to get this product right. And what we feel the community needs in this area is high quality owner occupied housing that one can get a traditional mortgage for. So affordability is key, as is location. The site, how do I click forward here? Oh, there we go. Perfect. The site is at 4th and Lee with Dewey Avenue on the east. And this area is northwest of the Devon Tower, obviously, in the Arts District. It's a very rapidly evolving part of downtown with catalyst projects like the 21C, the Jones Assembly, other commercial developments such as the Bob Moore Auto Group headquarters, which is one of our projects. We're seeing a lot of new residential development in this area. So we're very happy about that. We view this increasing density as a very positive thing for Oklahoma City, and it's also sort of the primary focus of our firm's work here. So mixed uses, mixed densities, all of these are key to a vital downtown, as are property owners vested in their community. So it's kind of hard to believe from these photos that we're only 3 blocks north of the Civic Center, but that's where we are. With John Rex School only a few more blocks away, we certainly see these units as appealing to young, growing families, as well as sort of empty nesters, young professionals alike, basically just people that want to take advantage of all the culture and opportunities and entertainment that downtown has to offer. So we start with a set of ambitions. These guide our decision-making and design process. Number one is placemaking. So as urbanists, we're very focused on designing a piece of the city. That's to say, you know, we consider the anticipated user, the specifics of the site and location, which really inform the design to create a very contextual, specific proposal for this site in Oklahoma City. Number two is the mix. So again, we've spent considerable time getting this right. We know density is important, but we also understand where we are, so parking can't be ignored. And with that, we worked very hard to create a hybrid proposal which combines a townhome typology with a condominium typology on the same site. So that frees up some of the ground area for necessary parking. Let's see. Number three, amenities. So that's to say we're thinking about the public face of the building, the streetscape. We're thinking about common areas which are shared amongst residents, and we're also thinking about the private areas which are owned by residents. So these all must work together in a sort of coherent dialogue on the site, which fosters a strong sense of community. Number four is unit variety, which sounds simple, but really this is one of the most difficult yet most important components to achieve on this site. Considering the cost of construction, having highly customized units is always a delicate balance. But we think, you know, the bottom line here is people have different budget needs, they have different spatial needs, and we feel the design responds to that. Number five, active edges. So this is relating to public amenities, but particularly the streetscape design. So we're using depth, we're using shadow, we're pushing and pulling the facade to create relief, to help to define the street edge where public and private space meet. And last but not least, of course, enduring architecture. So once we've got our strategies right for the last 5 items, we're thinking about what the building looks like. We intend to create a timeless building, respectful of its context, but with a unique character that helps to really define this particular piece of the city along 4th Street. So what's it look like? We start with the site. It's a vacant site at present. It's just grass. We define the street edge with a 2-story block of townhomes along 4th Street. The block is then broken into 2 masses, which defines the main entrance for the condo block behind. So we've located the mass of the building to the north. Parking is located at ground level. The entry sequence sort of terminates with a small lobby and elevator, mail facilities in that portion of the site. We then introduce density with the condo building above the covered parking. And so that consists of 3 floors of 8 units per floor, which includes 2 penthouse units, and you can see that sort of popped up area. Those are 2-story units with an internal communicating stair. Additionally, there is an 8-car carport on the western edge of the site, which will be constructed of brick. It will have a corrugated metal roof, which is flat and not visible really from the surrounding areas. In terms of massing, really, again, the height is concentrated towards the rear of the site, maximizing views to downtown. The buildings then step down along 4th Street, offering a more pedestrian-scaled environment. There will be, flip forward, dedicated entrances for all the townhomes on 4th Street. So again, this facade is modulated. We've pushed and pulled. We've inserted balconies to add architectural interest, which also offers them some protection from the sun and the wind. This allows us to control light and sort of frame views towards downtown. Finally, we overlay landscaping. Street trees, of course, improve the pedestrian experience. They also help shade the south elevation. Landscaping against the building sort of further provides that public amenity, but also helps buffer the public and private space within. Behind the townhomes, these have sort of private fenced yards, so that's sort of the owned space. Behind that, we have a shared landscape zone where we'll have trees that will help buffer the condo building from the townhomes on the site. Moving forward, our materials palette is fairly simple. The buildings are brick, basically, so we've chosen a high-quality king-size brick. Has a lot of iron content, so it has lots of the sort of earthy reds and browns native to Oklahoma. So we're really excited about this. The condo building will sit above a concrete podium, so that will be a natural finished architectural concrete, which is primarily screened on all sides. It will be visible from the alley frontage. Let's see, we have welded wire mesh, again talking to the concrete podium, which I'll show more on in just a moment, but this is going to serve as a trellis for vines to climb in between the columns of the parking structure, so that will then help screen the parking further and provide a nicer edge to the alley side. Our balconies are a custom steel fabricated balcony with sort of a deeper flat picket, so that allows views out from the units, but helps to screen the units from sort of the oblique street angle view that most people experience, like in cars or walking down the street. Let's see, black vinyl windows, low E glass. There will be some, like I said, the fences within the site that really won't be visible from the public side of the building. And those would be made out of wood, stained. Moving into the site plan, we see how these things start to come together. We've been working with the city along 4th Street to incorporate principles of the sort of integrated streetscape plan, and that includes narrowing of 4th Street with parallel parking, which buffers a bike lane. So that we're very much in favor of this. It reduces the length of street crossings, promotes walkability and alternative modes of transport. The pedestrian zone of the sidewalk is also buffered by a landscape zone and street trees, which will be added. Additional landscaping, again, against the building, as I mentioned, helps create an additional public amenity and buffer there. Again, active edges, this pushing and pulling of the facade is a very important part of the design. We're able to shade the entries with the overhanging balconies. We also create these stoops, which helps to define that border between public and private, sort of defendable space where one might have some potted plants or a welcome mat. But really that just, it activates the edge. It provides eyes on the street so that this area feels inhabited. Focusing on the condo block for just a minute, there's, again, the clearly defined public entrance off of 4th Street leading to the lobby and elevator facilities. There's 52 parking spaces at grade on the site. Vehicular traffic is all dealt with off of the alley, so all of the entrance and exits are on that side of our site. Let's see, yes. The typical condo floor plan, we have the elevator centered in the middle. We have stairs on the east and west ends. We've pocketed our fire doors, which allows the natural light and views out. So as soon as you step out of your unit, you've got a nicely lit corridor, which is a more pleasant experience, we feel. Let's see, I think I I mentioned, we always like to mention how trash is dealt with. I missed that. So that is contained in a room, so there's no exposed dumpster. So we were able to control the smells. Bins will be rolled out for collection in the alley and then replaced, so none of that's visible to the public. Back to the condos, there's 8 units, typically 3 2-beds, 5 1-beds of the flats in the condo building. Zooming in on what a typical unit looks like, again, large windows, lots of windows, very large balconies, which we see as external rooms, extending the living space outside, island kitchens, dining areas, large master suite with ample closets. That's a 1,500 square foot unit. And then I'll flip through the elevations briefly. You can see the stepped form where we have the 2 penthouse units where we've broken up the mass into sort of smaller chunks. We express the verticality with these carved cuts where the balconies live. We then balance that with a horizontal expression of our brick. So by using these projecting bricks, we get a nice play of shadow and light on the building, which changes throughout the day. North elevation is similar. This would be the alley frontage, so you get an idea of the infill and the climbing vines, which screen the parking, as well as our gates, overhead door containing the trash room. And the east and west elevation, we have an 11-foot 8-inch floor-to-floor height, which results in a 10-foot clear ceiling height for all of the units. Our overall height is 60 feet, taking into consideration a couple feet of fall on the site, and that is within the code-mandated height limits for our construction type and site. We've expressed the stairs on the exterior with a sort of brick screen wall, so that allows light and views out, but also shades the lower east and west sun angles for the site. Moving to the section, one element I wanted to point out was this idea of the cascading balconies, which it provides a greater area and sense of this being an external room, which increases in value as you go up the building. You get an idea of how these units stack up. Ground level parking, 2 floors of standard 10-foot clear flats, and then the penthouse units with their communicating stair and the pop-ups adding north light and volume to the units as well. The townhomes, they're 2 stories. They have a balcony which projects 3 feet over the 4th Street sidewalk, enclosed fenced backyards. And finally, CGI of the main condo building. This is roughly from the alley and Lee Avenue. So again, you can see these ideas, the cascading balconies, brick detailing, expressed stair, screened parking along the alley, the carport with its brick facade, and the townhomes beyond, which I'll quickly go through those. These are unique and quite different to the condo flats. So these are where the larger homes are located. So they're primarily 3-bed units with some 4 and 2-bed units as well. So we see these a little more geared towards families. They do have private enclosed garages in these cases, as well as the larger covered patios and backyards. To an enlarged floor plan, again, you get an idea of how this street edge works, and then the elevated stoops at the entrances. Overhanging balconies providing cover for those. Inside, we have, let's see, this is our 2nd floor, again, the south-facing balconies, which allow us to sort of frame those views towards downtown a little better. All of these have north and south exposures, so ample natural light. Let's see, inside, typical, similar open plan living. Again, the townhomes have added amenities such as more storage, dining rooms, spilling out into covered patios, and upstairs, again, large master suite. Laundry facilities are upstairs in these units. And in elevation, we have a 25-foot height, which establishes a more human-scale datum along 4th Street. In the back, you can see the solid garage doors, which align with our our parking drive aisles in these units. All of the units have large sliding glass doors, which again extend that living space into the backyard. And a view of the main entry. This is, you get a sense of kind of what these ideas, how they come together, the shadow created by the protruding bricks, large windows, landscape buffers along the sidewalk. The entrance, we're still getting into branding and signage, so I think the gate, we're still working on the design of that. As our, color, we're still considering, we're kind of leaning back and forth between maybe a quieter color palette, but that will all be to come. And finally, a view down 4th Street where this idea of the integrated streetscape is apparent, the parallel parking, bike lane, buffered pedestrian zone, street trees, stoops are visible. The idea of breaking down this facade into more human-scaled units becomes more apparent. Again, that idea about the balcony pickets screening those units from the street view is evident. So all said, 32 homes on the site, 54,000 square feet. It's a 140 by 250-foot site, and that's a lot to pack into that amount of area. We're very excited about it, and I think I'll stop talking for a moment and open it up to any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does staff have any comment, or are there any comments from the committee?
When are they going to be done? Can I sign my lease now?
We hope that they're done in second quarter of 19.
And I will note that the plat was approved, right? But were there any conditions or anything about it change?
The plat was approved. I don't believe there were any conditions. That's correct.
Do we have any comments from anyone in the audience on this item?
Sure.
Brett Price, 511 North Dewey. I don't think they need it, but just want to sing some of their praises for the, I live just to the east, and the thoughtfulness that went into engaging, I think it was your 6 core covenants or something like that. I think you did a good job of incorporating those, bringing in the street and the materials, the quality of the materials. I think they did a great job. And talking to some other developers in the area, I think a lot more, given you have a full block, so it's a lot easier to incorporate the new street plan, but I think there's a lot of interest in incorporating that new street plan with the sidewalks and the bike lane that's interior, so hopefully we see some more of that going forward. But just want to sing their praises on a job well done. Look forward to seeing it. My kids aren't very good at riding their bikes yet, so I appreciate the extra room there. Yeah.
Any other comments? Well, I agree. I think it's an excellent project. It's nicely done, and how you've brought people into the site and vehicles in a different area, and the way that you've treated this is exactly what you want to see in a mixed-use urban environment. I have 2 comments, and they really don't, they might not pertain, considering the fact that you're still looking at your material palette, but you have black and vinyl. At times, with older technology of vinyl at least, that would have the opportunity to fade. And I noticed that you had these windows separated, so then you have a mull cover or something in between the two, which may or may not be vinyl, and if they faded at different rates, that could come into play in your palette. And then also your particular brick, although you didn't mention it, there are some bricks that have that dark brown with that iron spot that if the way that they are installed and cleaned during construction is not really cared for, it can cause a rust bleed down the face. So something to talk to your masonry supplier and make sure that that gets avoided.
Sure,
but otherwise, excellent project, and I'll entertain a motion from the committee.
I will move that we approve this application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report.
Second.
That's a Skowthorne Kriegel All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go back to the one that was...
C.
You can go back. I don't think they're here. I think we have to continue.
So earlier in the meeting, we moved item 6C to the end of items for consideration. This is 631 West California Avenue. Has the applicant arrived? In that case, do we need to make a motion? And
Yeah, I would make a motion to continue it, where I don't feel comfortable having it heard without the applicant here.
Okay.
Yeah, February meeting.
I'll make a motion to continue, is it 6C, until the February committee meeting.
Second.
That was Blatt Kriegel. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item 6C is continued to the February meeting. Moving down the agenda to communications, we have a presentation on the agenda. Is the presenter present?
Yes, I am. Perfect. Are we ready?
Yes, if you could state your name for the record.
Great. My name is Rob Rule. I'm an architect with Rule Joy, Tramblin Rubio, Architects and Interior Designers. And on behalf of Omni Hotels, I'm pleased to be here today to present the design for the proposed Convention Center Hotel located on Robinson Avenue on the block between the Oklahoma City Boulevard and 4th Street, just north of the Convention Center that you heard some discussion about the bridges today. So to give you an overview of the project, I'll go through a few slides here, and then, of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. As you can see from the overall site plan, the tower of the hotel, which has all of the guest rooms, is located in the northern part of the block that you can see here. The rest of the remainder of the block is the hotel program with all the amenities and back-of-house support functions that a hotel of 605 guest rooms would need to have, and then, of course, all the outdoor space associated with that on top of the roof that you can see here. So going through the ground plane, if you will, around the entire block, we can walk from the corner of Robinson and Oklahoma City Boulevard here, directly across the street from the arena, where there would certainly be pedestrian traffic, which we would enhance and make a great experience moving from the arena further south to the convention center by activating that entire streetscape with very active uses, starting with an entertainment bar concept at the corner, moving into a full-service restaurant, and then even a cafe, coffee shop is the envision for that. So a lot of indoor-outdoor covered seating area, utilizing the sidewalk, really inviting people on the sidewalk to move in and out of the project the entire length of the block. Going to the right along Oklahoma City Boulevard, this is the main front door of the hotel. Obviously, with a hotel of this size, having an arrival that accommodates motor vehicles in a porte-cochere type environment that's covered, as you see here, is important. And the way Oklahoma City Boulevard is being designed compared to Robinson, of course, the Broadway and 4th, it is the logical front door for the project, and that is where you can see the motor court arriving there. And there is a notion that there would be a potential for underground valet parking. So there is a little bit of a ramp that kind of is a quick ramp that you wouldn't see. You wouldn't experience this from the sidewalk. It just ducks right down. It's disguised by a combination of landscape and hardscape elements where valet could actually pull up and service it like a very normal hotel of this size would accommodate. And then at the other end of the block, there is additional active use space. There would be a full-service restaurant at this location complete with outdoor dining areas. And then a series of hardscape and softscape elements. We've identified this as being a great opportunity for even some public art because of the distance from the back of curb to the face of the building. And so that would be a great opportunity there for as people arrive from the city from the east as an arrival moment. Moving down Broadway, in between the new parking proposed structure across the street, this would be a location where buses could actually drop off. We're proposing that there would be a drop-off lane on the property to allow buses and their luggage to come into the project close to the front door. And then moving further down Broadway, there is this notion, as I said, the potential to have a ramp, a quick ramp down for parkers, valet parking to enter the ramp. The other ramp would be an exit. This would be the entrance down into that area. And then more of the service elements of the hotel, which relate to the zone where service occurs for the convention center. Actually, at this area, we have all of our service functions, which necessarily require multiple lanes for loading docks and semi-access and deliveries and so forth, as well as some of the utilities that have to be there, transformers and all the electrical entrances into the project, which necessarily have to be there. And that would sort of continue around along 4th Street to a point where there would be a secondary bus drop-off entry in between the convention center and the hotel. There would be a secondary front entry into the hotel at this point that actually faces the convention center that would have all of the sort of amenities that you would expect upon entering a hotel. There would be active space on one side. Right now it's proposed to be a very active retail space on one side and then the coffee shop at the corner, sort of rounding out the entire ground floor experience. As we look at the ground floor program inside the hotel, this is how it's sort of laying out right now. And it basically follows what I told you before. You can start to see sort of at the arrival where the motor court is, the space in the lightest color that you see for the lobby space. The interior design is currently under development and the theming of the hotel. But that is sort of the place where the lobby and the front desk and check-in all occur, and you can see the elevators that take you up into the guest room tower, which work right off of the main lobby, which the tower, as you remember from the plan, moves from left to right in this zone. At the significant corner at Robinson and Oklahoma City Boulevard is the entertainment bar I was showing you, and this sort of gives you a flavor of the scale and capacity. These white areas are all tables and chairs and entertainment venues, gaming things, all the things that go along with entertainment, sports bars type of thing. And then the additional spaces along the frontage here with restaurants and cafes, and you can sort of see an indication of the start of how outdoor seating might lay in to those zones. And then coming around the corner, you can see the retail space near the secondary entry of the hotel facing the convention center. And all these other elements that you see in here are the normal program for a hotel of this size to support that operation with laundry and back of house and administrative and cooking functions that have to happen. And then, of course, back up here to the top is the second restaurant, full service. This is a plan that I just brought to show you that if the underground parking doesn't happen, that we would embellish this area with landscaping, once again, maybe public art, where the ramp would have been. That would transform there. And then, of course, we can certainly use a little bit more program for this size hotel by taking out the ramp that would go down to the deck there. And so that would be the only change for that. This is just an informational diagram to show that because of the tall first floor that's required in a hotel of this size and nature, we're taking advantage of a mezzanine space for the entertainment bar, so it creates more opportunity. Once again, this is a very, very visible element on the street, both from outside as you drive by and walk by. So having that kind of two-story space of activity with big video walls and all the screens and all the kind of fun stuff you have, that would be great right across from the Thunder Arena. And then sort of the second floor, which is the main meeting and convention space, not convention, but conference space. There is a grand ballroom that you can see here. There's a junior ballroom that you can see here. The light color spaces are all the circulation required, which we call pre-function outside of those spaces that wrap around, coming from the elevators and some escalators from below. You can go move one way, one direction to the grand ballroom and ancillary meeting rooms, as well as a significant element that we think is great, and I'm going to show you that three-dimensionally, is a covered outdoor pre-function that supplements the indoor pre-function space. And this would actually be located directly across from the park with fantastic views, and also providing that three-dimensional depth so that when you're on the street or in the park or walking by, you can see that there's activity not just on that ground level with all the great stuff happening there, but even above that, and there's stuff, the inside-outside activity happening there. So it's not just a a blank wall of convention stuff that happens behind. It really opens itself up to the park and the street on that side. Everything else you can see here in the same similar colorations are other meeting rooms, and then the space, the back of house space with kitchen components and everything that back serves all those components. Another interesting feature is on this pre-function space, we have daylight at both ends. So when you're in this space, you're oriented to the convention center to the south, as well as framing a view to the downtown skyline to the north. And then we get above that with a roof that you can see the roof of the ballrooms here. Significantly, it's important that we located the tower so that they are not over the ballrooms in any way, because the structure of a tower interferes with the planning of those ballrooms, which are column-free space. But when you arrive at this floor from the elevators here, we have a spa that you see located on one side. We have a fitness center there, and then you can continue to actually an outdoor bar that's covered by the tower. Once again, it's another layer of this sort of interaction between the low levels of the building and the park and the street at that significant corner that then goes completely outside to a rooftop environment for the amenity pool that would be complete with fire pits and resort-style cabanas, an outdoor function space that could have pavilions and tents set up there. So when you're driving by or walking by, like I said, you'll see lots of activity, lots of light and people and great things happening up there. And then finally, as far as the stacking goes, these are typical guest room towers, tower plans, low-rise and high-rise, and then the top floor plan that you can see how the guest rooms sort of lay out with the downtown views to the north and then the southern views to the south. But then, of course, as you're looking at your room, looking up north, you see the core-to-shore plan in this layout. All the units look up the core-to-shore, primarily to the core, and then primarily south to the shore. But everybody enjoys that sort of experience from the guest room tower. So looking at the facades, it's a very, I think, a nicely composed composition of breaking down the massing as the building as it moves from along the core-to-shore program along the street on Robinson, but also along on Oklahoma City Boulevard, and as it moves vertically, it changes and it breaks down. The lower floors of the building are predominantly brick, as you see here. There's a portion of it that has a brick that would have a tone that we would like to relate to the immediate context of Bricktown, so that it relates a little bit to what's going on nearby. As it moves towards Robinson, it changes and becomes a little more different. The brick here is a little bit more of a glazed black brick that has a little bit of speckle to it, a little bit of sparkle and life and movement in it. And then there's this picture window I mentioned at the pre-function of the second floor that sort of punctuates that, providing a little accent mark with glass that's a little bit more contemporary and has a metal frame with an accent color around that has that sort of downtown view. And then, of course, the area that's in the middle that punctuates all of that black brick is an even lighter combination of metal and glass for the main entry of the hotel. The front door is here, and there would be a canopy here that covers that motor court that we saw in plan earlier. And then at the corner, the glass portion of the tower actually comes down to over the notch-out area for the entertainment bar and the covered arcade along Robinson, where the indoor-outdoor seating areas would be. And then, of course, there's this notch here where the outdoor bar is associated with the pool. The other materials that round out the facades are architectural precast concrete. So there is a solidity and a certain mass to the light colors that you see here, which would be a combination of two different finishes of architectural precast concrete, which relate to the brick masonry coloration, but are different, and they get a little bit lighter as they go up. There's a lot more glass that's associated with the project as it goes higher and reflects more sky and becomes light as it transcends from the base to the top. Moving around to, and I'm going to go in a clockwise direction. This is actually the service side of the building along Broadway. You can see the tower here as the precast material translates. We have a couple of different finishes in the tower where it's solid, and then there's more glass on the north and south sides. And then along Broadway, we are actually introducing another finish, which is a stucco-like finish, an IFAS-type product that would be a stucco-like finish that works with that palette as it comes around the side. And then there's some actual metal louvers that we're using for some of the mechanical requirements that need to be there for the mechanical systems at this corner of the building at 4th and Broadway. And then from that point where I just described, it turns the corner. Once again, we still have the stucco-like IFAS type finish that then, once we get closer and closer to Robinson, it translates back to the brick material that you see here that frames out the secondary entry, which is where I'm pointing now, which has active space beside that with retail and coffee shop space at the ground level, and then open windows that actually look into that pre-function for the grand ballroom above. And then there's some signage and super graphic opportunities at the corner at this location here. And the tower that you see there is the tower beyond. It has the architectural expression for the elevator core that necessarily needs to be there in lieu of some of the glacier look that you saw on the north sides. But other than that, it's a very similar facade as the north side of the tower. And then coming around to Robinson and completing the elevations, you can see that corner where the super graphics are at the second floor over the cafe, coffee shop, the restaurants, and the entries to the restaurants and the outdoor seating all along Robinson. And then, of course, the entertainment bar, which I'll show you more descriptions of that in a moment, with the lobby, the pool bar above that in the notch of the building, opening up into the open terrace there. So you got these 3 levels of active space here, from the ground level to that open pre-function right off the ballroom, and then the rooftop terrace where the pool is. And then to kind of give that a little bit of a 3-dimensional reality look with the modeling, you can see the view from across the way at Robinson, moving from left to right and looking down Oklahoma City Boulevard. You can see the tower with this combination of glasses that soars to the sky. You can see the picture window here, the porte cochere motor court happening here, the entertainment bar happening here with the lobby bar above it that opens up into the rooftop terrace, the ballroom level, and then all the activity that happens on the ground level along Robinson. This moves around to the south. You can see a little bit better views of sort of that the stacking of the 3 levels of the active space all along the block. Moving around even further to the south, a little bit closer to the convention center, you can see a little bit different view of that and how it all relates from the arena to the convention center. Moving back to Oklahoma City Boulevard, sort of a straight-on shot, not unlike the elevation, but a little bit more 3-dimensional. A little bit closer view of maybe a little bit more of the flavor of the activity that we anticipate at the corner with the mezzanine bar and the entertainment bar that you see there, with the lobby bar above here. There'll be meeting rooms in between, of course, on the meeting room level that you see there, but very, very active corner. And then same thing with the opposite corner as it wraps around the corner and becomes the secondary entry. The motor court itself is very typical of a hotel of this size, but we've designed it so it's very walkable, very safe. It's not off-putting. It's very permeable. People can walk in and out throughout it, so it's a very open environment. And then, of course, a view of the pool terrace on top, which we hope to be a great destination for Oklahoma Cityans. And then we brought some additional diagrams if there's any questions about. I don't know if you have any about floor-to-ceiling heights or floor-to-floors and that kind of stuff. And but that's pretty much what I brought today. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain any.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. I think this is great. Do we have any comments, questions for the applicant? I've got a question. So earlier this meeting, we looked at a potential pedestrian sky bridge from the convention center to the hotel.
Yep.
Do you have a sense of where that would tie into the hotel itself?
Right there. Very close to where the actual secondary entry is, facing 4th Street. We would anticipate that bridge could tie in right there and be a great addition to that environment.
And then there's, we talked about a bridge from the hotel to the convention center and the garage to the convention center. Is there any anticipation for a bridge from the hotel to the garage?
Not currently planned, but that's not precluded by the way the hotel is planned right now.
Okay. Do we have any comments? Would anyone in the gallery like to speak to this?
Rob, when were you guys thinking you would come in for approval? A couple months?
Yeah, I think so. Do you know what the date is?
Just roughly speaking.
March meeting? Yeah. We just wanted to give you guys a look and see what any initial comments you might have.
I think this is a great project, and, there's definitely a lot of people here in Oklahoma City that are looking forward to this project as well. I think the streetscape was handled extremely well, especially on Robinson. Like you said, providing a presence of the building close to the sidewalk, giving it an urban-type setting, but at the same time allowing flow and activity to permeate into the building at all three levels, I think is a great move. Yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing you guys again in a couple months, and thank you for coming in and presenting.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah. All right, we'll see you then. Just like this.
Okay, moving on to, I don't have administrative approval report. Are there anything to note? Any other comments from staff?
I would note there's a few rooftop cell antenna replacements on the A report, because that's usually where we see them.
Do we have any comments from the committee?
I'll remind everybody about January 26th training. Let me know if this is the first you're hearing about it. But mark your calendars. We've made some changes to try to make it more engaging and more informative. So please come.
Okay, our next meeting will be Thursday, February 15th. Meeting adjourned.